Hey folks, Brian Musser, the Baptist Campus Minister here at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Bible Study. The peace of Jesus Christ to change your life, the power of the Holy Spirit to change the world. And we are doing our series on the good news. The gospel is good news for every person and every part of life. Over the last several weeks, we have been looking at these 5 major question areas: relationships, lifestyle, purpose, belonging, and beliefs. The question areas that quite often life revolves around. And this week we are going to be looking at the 4th one of these, which is belonging, or this idea of where do you call home? I want you to think through some questions. Where do you call home? Why is that your home? What makes you feel at home there? Now, we obviously live differently at home than, say, when we're a guest in someone else's house. Quite often, in someone else's house, we are more careful not to step on their toes, not to cross their rules. We don't feel like we have total control over the environment, and we try to live differently than, say, if we were at our own house. Of course, it's interesting to think a guest at someone else's house, we might live a little bit differently, a little bit more cleanly than other places, a little less intrusive. Unless we're a guest at a hotel or motel or someplace where we're paying people to take care of us, and then the towels are on the floor, the bed goes unmade, we just live without consequences sometimes at hotels. And it's interesting how this sense of home, when it's someone else's home that we feel like we're a guest at, there's one set of rules. When it's a business that it's nobody's homes, we feel like there's a different set of rules. But when it is our home, we have a third set of rules. What makes you truly feel at home? And I'm going to draw this thermostat idea here. This is kind of an extended metaphor, and we're going to look back through the last 4 lessons as we do this. Now, the first one, we talked about relationships and how we make connections with people as we're developing things. And if we're thinking about a connection through a thermostat metaphor, you walk into a new place, and whoever is the host of that place asks you if you're comfortable with the temperature. Should I change it or not? And they want you to feel at home, and they want to make the environment as comfortable for you as possible. And this is a relationship building technique. But once you're in that environment for a while, once you start getting used to it, your body will adjust to the temperature, or your mind will adjust to the temperature. Maybe your body will be cold, but your mind will eventually forget about that on one level or another. And that could be lifestyle. How do we live in the environment we are? How do we feel at peace or comfortable in the environment we are? But then we get to a point where we feel like we have the power to change the temperature. We can adjust the thermostat. Maybe for some guys, we never get that with our house, with our wives and our family there. But for others, that is where we feel like we have control over the world we live in. And that gives us a sense of purpose. It is now up to us to control the environment around us. But then there's this 4th level, and this is where I really think belonging comes in, is when you develop this sense that you have the responsibility to adjust the temperature for those around you. You now become the host. It's interesting to think about hospitality as the status of when you truly belong someplace. When you engage in a community so much that you can be hospitable to others in such a way. I remember there was this church in Philly, Epiphany Fellowship, and I took this student there with me the first time he attended this church. He was new to the Philadelphia area, and I was showing him around to the churches in the area, and I went with him to Epiphany, and I took him there and introduced him to the people in that church. Now, years later, I show up at Epiphany again, and this student had joined that church, had connected with that church, was serving in that church, and was actually a leader in that church at this time. And I remember showing up, and he was the one hosting me. He had gotten so comfortable in that environment that he was now the host and was making sure I was okay with the church I introduced him to in the first place. And that's kind of the goal in community is when you're in a place, do you first of all feel comfortable? Have you adjusted so that even some of your lifestyle mechanisms are adjusted to that place? Do you feel like you have control over the environment that you could actually make changes if necessary? And are you now becoming someone who can host others in that situation? Now, when we're thinking about this and thinking about the gospel along this, I belong to Jesus. Jesus isn't, this is Jesus's world. I belong to Jesus. And because of that, this is a safe place for me. I have the ability and the responsibility to glorify God through my actions. And therefore, since I belong here, I can now help others feel included in Jesus's kingdom as well. His kingdom is my home. Would you like to come and visit my home? And eventually, my home as his kingdom could also be your home as well. That is how we're looking at this sense of belonging. Where do we call home in this great big old world, and how hospitality now becomes a sense of belonging throughout. Now, as always, thank you for joining me in this conversation. There are two ways you can participate. The first way is live Monday nights at 7 p.m. via Zoom. The details are in the messages below. Then there are these weekly wrap-ups like this one that you'll find on YouTube and WordPress. I got a special advertisement this week. On Monday, November 9th at 2 p.m. via Zoom. The link is right there in the image. We are going to be talking about time management is spiritual, using our spiritual beliefs to make time management decisions. How do we allow what we believe to help us choose how we go about making time management decisions? That will be coming up on Monday. I will also, after the live session at 2 p.m. on Monday, at some time during the week, I will post a recorded video dealing with the content, much like these weekly wrap-ups. And you can participate that way as well. As always, come and find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WordPress, YouTube. All those links will be in the description below. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to talk to you again real soon.